I've got my own picks of winners and losers for this whole thing, and I'm going to see if you actually agree with me. Now, I was going to say Ted Cruz, winner out of this. Now, why would I say Ted Cruz is the winner throughout all this? I mean, he's pretty much now an incredibly unpopular, even within his own party. Well, this will help him get through the primary. Now, throughout this whole thing, throughout this whole thing, he's established his bona fides as a super incredible conservative. He led pretty much the entire GOP over a cliff, and then is like watching them, as they all fall over and going, "Sucks to be you, man." I just got number one in values on the values voters straw poll.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Now, if you can remember, to kind of contrast this, like I said, we recently had the Values Voters Summit over the past week, and if you remember, conservative darling Paul Ryan, he is dead last in the straw poll. Ted Cruz won with he won with 42% of the vote in this straw poll. 42%. According to Think Progress, 2 million email addresses for himself and other members of the, quote, Senate Conservative Fund.
Yeah,
Amazing.
This was for an upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was all theater. I think if we're really honest to ourselves, the whole thing was political theater played out. And it was even, you knew it was political theater when Cruz came out dressed in a Carhartt jacket. Like he's getting ready to replace some a pothole somewhere at the memorial.
Oh yeah, and of course if you remember his 21-hour filibuster, that wasn't really even a filibuster. That was once again all theater.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Cruz is looking out for himself. Essentially, that's what his entire plan was all along.
But do you think there's going to be a point ever in our politics where the American populace actually gets to the point where they're like, "Oh, boy, you have cried wolf too many times. I do not hear your bark." Because it seems like, I mean, the Obama presidency, I've certainly got a lot of problems with a lot of Obama policies.
Oh, for sure.
Foreign policy. But it just seems like these guys have thrown hissy fit after hissy fit, and they've all turned out to be complete theater-based nonsense time after time. And you can always tell it's the same cast of clowns who come out.
Michelle
Bachmann. You'll have Steven Crowder come up somewhere and get into a near fist fight, and you could just go on. There's this reoccurring cast of clowns who keep climbing out of the car, and it's silly, and it's pure political theater to.
But it's also destructive, and
yes,
that's
the
thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, yeah,
it makes money on one end,
Speaking of money,
and helps them recruit. I understand why they're doing it. I mean, it makes total sense politically. But yeah, in the end, it's very destructive because it doesn't get anything done. It causes a ton of just, it cost us $24 billion,
Yep.
in the last 2 weeks for what? We're paying all these salaries. We didn't get any work from the people. Not to blame them.
Right.
But we didn't get any of this. The government just paid for 2 weeks of free labor, for
But even though conservatives like Ted Cruz are like, nailed it, or at least we would have nailed it if those the Republicans in the Senate would have supported the Republicans in the House, we would have nailed it. But if it wasn't for those meddling kids.
You would have nailed it all the way down to a possible global economic meltdown,
But if Ted Cruz gets his way, if Ted Cruz does not care about anybody that is not Ted Cruz.
Well, that's quite a common affliction among politicians.
Oh yes.
And He's
You
not
were
unique.
speaking of money earlier, right? Well, Ted Cruz raised about nearly $800,000 from this entire little stunt. So he did quite well. So that is why I'm putting him in the winners category.
Yeah, he is definitely a winner. The American people aren't a winner because of his
No.
win. I mean, like I said, yeah, we've suffered and lost money, and all for what? A bunch, a silly few protests and yeah, childish stuff.
Political games, political
Sure.
theater. That's all it is. So who else was a winner? I actually picked Harry Reid. He was kind of a winner through this
Yeah.
because he held strong. He didn't lose. He didn't really lose any standing. I mean, the Democrats took a little bit of a hit, but as far as Harry Reid goes, I would label him a winner because, like I said, he stood strong, uh, didn't give in to the demands, and actually pulled out a deal with Mitch McConnell, which wasn't disastrous for once. And another winner, I would actually give the other winner spot to the healthcare law, Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
And why? Well, this whole theater stuff, it really took the discussion away from the pretty poor rollout of the healthcare law. The website had some major problems, but since we're having this whole shutdown debacle, nobody really pointed it out all that much. It really wasn't, and it actually ticked up a couple of points in the popularity. So there's my list of winners. Well, who's the losers? John Boehner, definitely John Boehner. He's getting criticism from pretty much everywhere. One criticism that I've heard is that he can't keep control of his entire caucus. That's disastrous. And from the other side, from the Tea Party base, he's obviously getting in trouble for being a so-called rhino, for giving in to the Obama administration, giving them everything they want, not being conservative enough. I believe he's going to face a challenger from the right, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not really sure about that. I would be very suspect of anyone actually being able to knock John Boehner off of his perch in southwestern Ohio in the district that he is in. Extremely gerrymandered.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in. Well, how long has he been a congressman? 20 years. Yeah, Boehner is from this. Really, he's the Chamber of Commerce Republican.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy. He's the country club, bourbon swelling, cigar. The classic, like we talked about earlier, country club, Chamber of Commerce Republican, and that's where. He's an establishment Republican. Big money. He's all about that.
If you can look up John Boehner as in his links to tobacco.
Oh yeah, he likes to hand out checks on the floor of Congress from tobacco companies to other congressmen. Yeah, he's a piece of work,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. But
And
I don't see that big of a threat from the primary. The Tea Party's not that. Southwestern Ohio is very politically apathetic, like amazingly apathetic. Very, very low turnout. No one cares. But maybe that could leave him kind of open too. So I don't know.
who knows? As far as politically, he may, I still think that there may be a possibility of some sort of challenge to a speakership, although maybe it's not very likely. He's still politically the loser in this, and I would urge him to stay away from his Facebook page because they're getting pretty nasty over there from what I see. So, well, what else? Well, the Tea Party, big loser in this one. Now, the Tea Party is at the lowest popularity ever. They are 30%, and that's above, or I'm sorry, that's among everybody. 30% popularity. Among Republicans, and this is kind of an amazing stat. According to Pew Research, Republicans rate the Tea Party favorability at 27%. Now, I'm thinking that maybe that shows kind of a split between the Tea Party and the GOP.
Well, it's always been a split, though.
But
You know,
it's getting to be a
now it's
major
really
split.
pronounced. Yeah, you're right. It's
Yes.
always been a strain of um, contention in the Republican Party, that libertarian, Barry Goldwater, Ron Paul type of wing, um, that have been a threat or considered, at odds with the Chamber of Commerce Republicans.
Let's get back to some of the losers on this government shutdown and finish that up. Now, GOP, I would also consider loser because of how much the party has continued to fragment, to continue to split. Now, like you said, there was an evident split before, as you know, the Tea Party was more of the sort of the rebel faction within the GOP, but at no other time has the split been so pronounced now, where John McCain is coming out there, that establishment guy is going out there and having open fights with, with Ted Cruz and with Louis Gohmert, you know. So, I mean, that just shows big split, and that's a house divided cannot stand, is the old saying that I would apply to this situation. So, I mean, will the Tea Party split up into a third party? Who knows? Maybe. But then, of course, I want to go to one of the more important losers in this fight, and that is, of course, America. We did not win anything in this fight. It is a loss. Um, the shutdown, of course, cost about $24 billion, and our growth was cut by 0.6% off this year's fourth quarter growth, according to Standard & Poor's. So we lost productivity. We lost growth, potential growth, because of this manufactured crisis. And we continue to lose out every time they come up with one of these idiotic manufactured crises. And the final, of course, loser is specifically going from America as a whole to a section of America, and that's people who are poor. And people who live paycheck to paycheck, people who, relied on services such as WIC, which was very, very important, and that had run out of funding. There were other really important programs that ran out of funding. Social Security, you weren't able to apply for new benefits since that was shut down, even though checks still went out. You were unable to access a lot of the services, and I think that ended up hurting a lot of poor people, which sadly, of course, our Congress doesn't give a rip about.
And let's talk about another loser too. Let's talk about, I think the veterans were a loser in this whole thing. Number one, they were used as a
political prop, yeah.
a prop, like some, like my can of Billy Beer here. That us veterans were reduced to a prop in a bad Sarah Palin public relations stunt.
Absolutely. If I recall, that one of the veterans there actually called Sarah Palin an idiot.
Yeah, there's a video that I did surface of them, and of course they get kind of shouted down by the horde there. But yeah, that thing was so disingenuous, completely. It was ridiculous, and I think veterans everywhere need to basically voice their displeasure with. How dare you use the deaths of so many people as your political stunt.
Right.
They closed all the memorials down. They weren't like picking on veterans and trying. Yeah, that whole thing was just so embarrassing, and plus we're no closer to having things like full veterans taken care of for life with health benefit, and
right.
a lot of the backlog. I think maybe that would have been something that would have been great to have been addressed in this. Is more money for VA services to address some of the backlog for mental services. We got
Absolutely.
a lot of these guys in this situation, but there wasn't anyone. No one was speaking out for the real needs. And so, yeah, I think veterans were a loser, were once again used as pawns in a political game, and yeah, it sickens me.
I will definitely second that. You're absolutely right on all of those points. And it's pretty sad that we live in a country where our politicians only care more for using people as political props in order to gain political points than to actually try and solve problems to the very people that they're trying to use as props.
Sure.
And so I definitely agree with that. But in the end, I think that realistically, we all lose.
Hmm.
We just all lose. And part of that is because we're going to go through this probably in another 3 months. I mean, being completely honest, I'm not exactly um, looking forward to, I guess, doing this whole stupid fight again, facing another
And who
default
knows what they're going to come up with this time for, you know,
entitlements.
sure, some kind of.
They're going to go after your Social Security. They're going to go after your Medicare. They're going to try and give
Hmm.
you cuts. They're going to try and cut those programs in order to have a budget deal. And this time, I don't think the president is going to hold strong on that because he said time and time again that I'm willing to negotiate on entitlements. I'm willing to negotiate on
Hmm.
Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. I'm willing to cut those programs in order to get a grand bargain. And so I think that's the big danger to this.